On this episode, we have Glenn, what very kindly agreed to come back again. And I'd like to speak about disclosure. But before we speak about disclosure, I would like to chat about Glenn's podcast called Glenn Speaks, if that's okay.
That's fine with me, Tammy. Thank you for inviting me back. Always a pleasure.
Yes, and we have, well, I love our chats. So if you'd like to tell the people what's going to listen about Glenn Speaks, what it's all about, why you decided to do it, and yeah, people should head over and give it a watch.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tammy. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, as you know, I've been doing interviews on my YouTube channel now for, I guess, well, in recent times, I guess for the last 6 months or so, maybe a little longer. But going back beyond that, back to 2010, I have actually done some recordings with just me speaking, in particular when I was living in the Netherlands for a while. But I really feel that, as you know, I post quite a lot of things on social media. Very little of it is my own. Some of it is, but very little of it is. So I feel that I'd like to share my voice rather than be an echo for someone else, if you follow. So that's really what it's about. And so if your viewers are interested, I've actually put a short introduction to the new series up on YouTube, which is on my channel, which is at Glenn Speaks. And I think you've got the link to my channel, Tammy, so maybe you can add that
I will do.
at the end of the video so that people can reach me if they would like to.
Yes.
And just to say a little bit more, that basically what I'm planning to do, I've got quite a few topics in mind, and I'm going to spend probably 15, 20 minutes, something like that, not too long, just sharing my perspective on these topics, sharing my thoughts and views, dare I say, some of my wisdom, some of my experiences, what I've learned along the way. You know, the sort of things that I've been sharing with you and your viewers in previous interviews here, but in a more expansive, perhaps in a more dedicated subject matter style, so that people can, you know, hopefully get value. But as I always say, take what resonates, leave the rest. You know, this is not about me promoting myself. I don't make any money from this. My channel is not monetized at all. It's me sharing my passion for what I love to do. You know, this is my service or part of my service to the world. So that's what it's all about. So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but that's broadly.
Well, I absolutely love that because one of the reasons I started this channel was because uh, channel lots of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I want to get it out there and have people on so they can share their journeys to kind of create a community, really, so people can come on and share their journeys, but also their different perspectives, and they might not be the same as someone else, but that's okay, because to get a lot of different perspectives through, does it really matter? I think just expands our minds, and I think when we've got stuff to share, it's beautiful if we can get on and share it. And if it just assists one person, then for me, it's so worth it.
Yes. Yeah.
So worth it. Yeah.
Well,
So
as the law of one says, you know, if you reach one person, you reach all. So that's another way of looking at it. And yeah, so, you know, I'm not aiming to get hundreds or thousands of subscribers. I'm not aiming to, you know, become some sort of podcast guru. But what I am doing is sharing what I know, and you know, maybe, and I think hopefully, and I believe in future, certainly, maybe not now, but certainly in the future, a lot of what I share will be of value, because as I think you know as well, when we're going to come on obviously to disclosure, but when more truths come out, when more of what's been hidden and suppressed is revealed, people will have questions. You know, people will be, you know, because a lot of it will be completely new to many, who will have had no idea of what's been going on behind the wizard's curtain, as I put it. And, I can hopefully help with that because of my own background, my own research, and, the depths to which I've actually gone into this
Yeah.
truth seeking process.
And it is a process, isn't it? Well, for me, it's been a process.
Yeah.
Probably for yourself, it's been a process. So I wanted to talk about disclosure and how, okay, there's going to be quite a few points, and just feel free to answer them as you will. So, how maybe disclosure is different for some people, how it shows up for them,
Mhm.
what is actually coming out, what is actually being disclosed, because everyone's having such different experiences with it. Like for myself, I get downloads, I go into a channel. For me, other people will research, like you've said, and go, oh my gosh, what, this has been happening, and now I'm only just finding out like what is going on. So even though it's just one word, disclosure, it's quite a big, it's a big umbrella, isn't it, where so
Mm.
much is underneath it.
I suppose about 15, 20 years ago, it may have been longer. I mean, to some extent it was longer, but less, if you like, focused. I started to look into things, let's say, to look into what I call the bigger picture behind some of the worldly events, not just worldly events, some of the things that were reported about what was going on off the planet, including, would you believe, things like NASA reports. You may or may not know, but NASA actually reported in the late 1990s the so-called Oort cloud, as they called it, coming into our solar system, which is now the energy that we're feeling, or part of it, going through our own sun. Anyway, going back to what I was saying, so during that time, I learned mainly from independent, let's say, independent journalists, some whistleblowers, people like Kerry Cassidy, if you know her in particular, but others as well, David Wilcock. There was a website and TV, independent TV station called Gaia TV, which started about 20 years ago. And they did a series of interviews with various people, whistleblowers and people who, for example, have been involved in the so-called secret space program.
I love Gaia.
Yeah, and going back much further than that and covering all sorts of subject matter like the origin of the pyramids and what was happening in Antarctica, so on and so forth. Anyway, cut a long story short, this really drew my attention, right? So over time, I started accumulating information. That was, if you like, my research phase or my research timeline at that time. And I collected a lot of information. I still have a lot of information in a document that I've put together over many years. So it really started there and then just escalated over time. And of course, with different world events, with different, different things coming up in my own life, I started to look deeper, not just into the world, but, into my own, self awareness, as it were. And it moved on from there. So that more recently, and you touched upon it, like you, I've been getting downloads, and that's one of the many ways in which we receive information, receive wisdom and truth, I would call it. And, there's a lot in between. So I've learned from other people. I've learned from, a lot of channeled information, as you know, we've spoken about this before. And so that's really it. And this is partly why I've started this new podcast series, is because, I've got so much information.
So, do you think the way we're getting information now, so like you said, in the 90s, you started doing a lot of research. Do you think the way we're getting information now is changing? Have you
Very
seen?
much. Yeah, very much. It's much more energetic now because of the strength of
Yeah.
the energy coming onto the planet. Absolutely. And so, needless to say, which I didn't add to what I was, talking about earlier, my research is now like sort of this much as opposed to that much, 20 years ago, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that because I've acquired, if you like, a large collection of information already that it's like there's so much there, and it's just now adding a few bits and pieces. But I'm still learning. I think we
As
all
we
are,
all are.
and
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm learning a lot from the energy. I'm getting downloads in sleep. I know about that. As you know from our previous chats, I'm also, very much picking up things from the galactics now, from the galactic channelings, and from, even YouTube videos.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, but I'm also, it's a great process because after a while, certainly in my experience, and I think this probably applies for most people, it's not just about what I read or hear or see, right?
Yeah.
But it's about my own processing of that and how, what my bringing my own two penneth worth into it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I could talk a lot about certain subjects and repeat what other people have said or what I've learned from other people sharing their experience. But now I'm more able to say, well, okay, well, this is how I see it. This
Yeah.
is now my perspective. This is what I see because all this information is great, but unless you can connect the dots, as you
And
know,
do you think we connect in such different ways? Like, three people could have the same download, let's say.
yes.
Or no, we'll just say 1,000 people on the planet have the same download. But because we are connected, but we're having an individual experience. I know this is a lot. We're having so we will perceive it all slightly different. So,
Yeah, I mean, I may have said this before, but again, here's the rub. You see, we're looking at this obviously so far on one level, right? If you look at it on a higher level,
yeah,
the truth is that everyone knows everything, right? But
yeah,
it's accessing it because of our 3D conditioning and programming, I believe. In some cases, because of our soul contracts. In
mhm,
some cases, because of our karma. In some cases, because of our, if you like, intention not to engage. And I mean, I think there are lots of people like that. You see,
yeah,
so that's some of the reasons why I believe, a lot of people, and I include myself on this. I mean, I don't have all the answers. Sometimes I get answers, sometimes I don't, but it's accessing it is the thing.
yes,
And this is where I think presence comes in. I mean, we may talk about that later or on a different
yeah,
podcast. But when I'm in the present moment, I think when the royal we, are in the
mhm,
present moment, feeling calm and centered and relaxed, and breathing normally, no fear, no, the mind is still. That is the time when we receive and can receive, or at least be open to the information that we need. Now, of course, there is another adjunct to that, and that is everyone individually will receive things that are right for them, right,
yes,
quote unquote, which is, I think, what you're saying, right? So you receive things in your channelings which are for you, not
mhm,
necessarily for everyone.
yeah.
But what I'm saying is that basically everyone could ultimately access that same information.
Yes, yes, yes. I see that we can as well. Like you say, it's being in the present state, which for a lot of us, and even me, if I go about my day to day and I can get a bit stressed up,
Yeah.
not very present then. So with disclosure, what from your perspective do you think is going to be in the forefront for most people? What type of disclosure in the forefront for most people?
Yeah, I'm hesitating only because I'm not sure I can speak for most people,
Okay, then, just from your perspective, what do
if
you
you see what I
see?
mean. I mean, I could tell you what disclosure I would like to see, and I could
Yeah,
tell you what
perfect.
disclosure,
You see happening.
yeah, I mean, it will happen over time. I mean, in terms of what we as a society need in the short term,
Hmm.
as you probably know, there's a lot of talk online and from some of the podcasters about this so-called soft disclosure. Even the
Hmm.
galactics are talking about it. And I think what they mean by that is sort of softly, softly, exposing, and I believe this is more or less exposing the corruption, the manipulation, the the under the counter actions, if I can put it that way, that certain individuals, certain groups have been up to. That in itself is, I think, a way of getting people to think, or at least to start, if you like, questioning
Yeah.
the people that they see as authorities in
Yes.
this world. So, you know, I'm not going to name names, but, politicians, certain scientists, certain
Yeah.
experts in certain things, pretty much any expert you could name. And
Mhm.
it's not because, they're bad people. It's because they only know what they know, which is what they've been taught, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very narrow thing ultimately. They all have their specialities. And so they tend to think within that box. I was the same. I was a lawyer, so I was working within the legal box, you could call it. But what we need, I believe, in the short term is for people to know and to understand that a lot of these so called authority figures
Yeah.
have actually been deceived and lied to themselves, that they are basically telling us what they think is true, quite innocently in many cases, not always, but in many
Mhm.
cases, but not really knowing what they're saying,
Yeah.
without questioning it themselves, because for them it's their livelihood, right? So, and I mean, I'll come on to something that I heard recently shortly, but one of the challenges with disclosure is that there are certain vested interests that would not want to see the public know
Yeah.
what we would like them to know, if you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
because it potentially upsets their rice bowl, their
It
apple cart,
does. It really, really does. They wouldn't want that, like you said, their livelihood. So for something to turn that upside down, like on its head, they're not really going to want that, are they?
No,
Yeah.
and again, this is a good example of how, we are so restricted, we, the royal we,
Mhm.
by the money system that we operate in society, because
Yes.
people see things in terms of money they have, money they can spend, what they can buy with it, etc., etc. And the more they earn, the more successful they believe, or society believes them to be.
Yeah.
So there's that pressure as well. So there's a certain amount of not so much pressure to hide things, but pressure to maintain the status quo because, I'm all right, Jack.
Yeah. Lift the ladder up.
Yeah, and a very good example, obviously, are the pharmaceutical companies. They don't want, for obvious reasons, people to know that they can heal themselves. They don't want people
Mhm.
to know about med beds, for example.
No.
They don't want to know about advanced healing technologies because,
Mhm.
their interest is earning substantial amounts of money by, continuing as they are. It's
Yes.
not serving of the world, but of course they don't see it that way because, as I said, they see it within their own box.
Yeah.
This is our box. This is,
Yes.
it's almost like
So
myopic and
I'd like to
yeah,
jump
go on,
in here.
go on.
So with the healings that I healed myself from endometriosis and fibromyalgia, and I had a phone call from a gynecologist, which I used to get regularly, and she rang, and I was like, "Oh, I'm better," and she's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Oh, I'm healed," and she's like, "Can I ask how you've healed yourself?" So I said, "I started juicing, cutting food out of my diet." I said, "I watched this program called Heal, and I imagined fish going down and eating away all the endometriosis, and just done meditations." And do you know what she said? And this was really, really refreshing. She said, "I've been telling women not to have the operations because it's not fixing it." She said, "And this sounds so good what you've done," which I was quite shocked. Like, it was the first gynecologist what's ever said that to me. Normally it was an operation and another operation and another one. And she was actually really interested. And I spent about 20 minutes on the phone talking to her about it. So I'm hopeful that we're going to start seeing a push for that. I am hopeful for that. I
Mm.
mean, like I said, that was one out of many gynecologists I see, just the one, but it just starts off with one. But
Yeah,
I,
absolutely. That's very
mm,
refreshing. And, the more, if you like, doctors, medical experts, whatever they call themselves,
mhm,
can start thinking like that, the better. Of course, the challenge is that they don't want to put themselves out of a job.
yeah, yeah,
So this is one of the problems with disclosure.
yeah,
It's almost like, if you think of it in a bigger picture sense, society is in a sense, boxed itself into a corner, right? Because we
mhm,
have all these systems, right, that have been going on now for years,
yeah,
and we know that none of them are perfect, but even further than that, you could say a lot of them don't really serve us in the bigger picture sense. But to suddenly dismantle them and say, right, here's we're going to replace them with X, Y, Z. That's a huge thing for people to swallow.
yeah,
Huge. Not to mention the impact potentially of the world economy and so on.
yeah,
I believe it has to come eventually, but I think
mhm,
this is why we're getting soft disclosure rather than
yeah,
a little more like impetus because there are so many technologies that are being suppressed and hidden from the public, not just in the medical field, but in many different fields. I mean, free energy is another example.
yes,
So, we shouldn't be paying for electricity, this sort of thing.
mhm, yeah.
It's almost like you create this huge jigsaw puzzle and all the pieces into place, and now it's hell of a game to take all the pieces out again.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
And, paint a new picture, but that's ultimately what I think we're going to do.
Yeah, so with the next type of disclosure, with interacting with other beings,
Mhm.
other beings, I like that. And how, from your perspective, how do you feel? I mean, for some, it's already come about. For others, it's not even in their radar.
Right.
So how do you feel from your perspective that that's going to come about for those where it's not in their radar?
You see, I think I was saying earlier, there's certain disclosure that I personally would want and,
Mhm.
welcome.
We can go with that.
I don't think it's going to happen, but no. What I'm going to say is that it's the ET, or what I prefer to call them, our Star Nation brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
To be, and first of all, to be aware of them and to accept that they exist. I mean, that's first base, and I know
Yeah.
most people probably do now, but there's still
Mm.
some, I believe, that don't, or are not
Mhm.
sure, or are
Yeah.
skeptical, or are still, whatever,
Mhm.
on the fence. It's a timing thing, it really is. I read something the other day which resonated, and that is that it was saying that star seeds, light
Mhm.
workers, would be the first to have contact with their Star Nation families. Now
Mhm.
that makes sense because the people like us we're already prepared, if you like. We're already, accepting that
Yeah.
these people not only exist, but they can support us, they can help us. They are helping and supporting us, as we've talked
Mhm.
about in previous interviews. And so that is huge. Now, if that happens, and I believe it will, and some people are saying it'll happen this year in 2025, bring it on, as I say,
Yeah.
then, it's like stepping stones to me. Sometimes we need stepping stones to get to the island of paradise in the middle of the sea, or the middle of the river,
Yeah.
whatever you are. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is like a stepping stone,
Mhm.
and the more people like us can make contact with our Star Nation families, the easier it will become for them
Mhm.
and for us to, if you like, spread the word and to, in a sense, pave the way for those who are not yet ready
Yeah.
right? And I'm choosing my words carefully here. Not yet ready, to be ready further down the line. When that will be, obviously, that could depend on the individual, could depend on many things. But I suspect it could happen a lot quicker than we might think. And if there is significant contact this year, as I think there will be. I mean, my good friend Neil, you know Neil, I've interviewed him a few times. He reckons there will be contact this year. Then that can potentially open the floodgates, or at least open the gap a little bit. It's like opening the door a crack or two. Maybe not the floodgates, but the a little gap for
How
the
would you
stream to go
see
through.
how would you see first contact going? Just from your perspective or what you've gathered from your research?
Well, I think it could take many forms. I mean, for me, I'm already getting contact at night. I mean, I'm sensing beings in the room. I'm sensing beings, during sleep. I mean, I know that sounds crazy because I'm asleep, but if I'm lying in bed or whatever.
You're crazy.
So, I've had dreams, this sort of thing. And again, I think this is, not everyone's the same. One size doesn't fit all.
Mhm.
But that's been my experience. I've actually come up with a new affirmation, which I'll be happy to share with you,
Okay.
if you like, which I've been using, and which is, I think, to oil the wheels for my own personal contact. And so I'll read it to you, and it says, "I intend to connect with benevolent, high vibrational star nation beings that serve love and light."
Beautiful.
So that's my intention, right?
Mhm.
It's more an intention than an affirmation, although I could turn it into an affirmation. So I'm open to it. And you know what they say, when the pupil's ready, the teacher comes.
I'm just still knowing and seeing, but it's a no see what I get as you on the ship as a commander. It's just not it's not left. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
So, and again, you see, I mean, obviously, I don't know how much we've spoken about this in the past, but with the ascension process, we're going to be going to a place anyway where we will not just intellectually, but we will embody the concept of oneness, right? Now, when you embody the concept of oneness, what happens? Every sentient being in the cosmos is connected, and they are already. But again, it's because it's almost like with the 3D reality, it's a very different reality that, in a sense, restricts and limits our potential in that respect, and also tells us that it's all a load of nonsense and all the rest of it. And, some of it that goes in and goes deep. So, for a lot of people, it will be a case of overcoming those old beliefs, overcoming those old, limiting perspectives to enable them to, if you like, climb the ladder like the rest of us and actually see the reality of the existence of these wonderful beings.
Yeah. So I'm hoping or I'm hopeful that I channeled some information, and when I work with people more often than not, the other factor of me gets them to breathe in through their nose and expand the belly first, because they said it goes past, and they call it the portal of the human. It's a bit just there. It's like a round circle, and it's bigger or smaller on some people. And that is your portal to connect to everything. So you go through that portal you go in to connect outwards. And I'm just hopeful that people are going to start feeling their own individual one in themselves
Mm.
and work with that, because that is the one a key in our human technology body, like
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful bit of machinery we are,
yeah.
and that part can really help or assist with disclosure.
Absolutely. There's a very good meditation. I'll send you the link in a galactic channeling video on YouTube, which I watched a few days ago. It's a lovely meditation, and it uses what you were talking about. It talks about using light in the solar plexus and in the heart chakras, and then connecting them together, and then making contact basically with the higher realms. I can't, well, I could try to describe it in a bit more detail, but it's not too long, but it's fairly
If you send it over, then
specific.
I can link it.
Yeah,
I'll link it in the video. Yeah.
yeah, so I can definitely do that. Well, actually, I can tell you, it's called the Disclosure Project, and it's from the Ashtar Command.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hopeful that I'm going to do another video about our portal, what we
Mm,
carry in the human machinery of our body, because I feel that that's going to be very important for some,
yes.
and it just connects you to everything. It's absolutely beautiful. So I'm hoping that
Mm,
that disclosure kind of comes out a bit more about how good the machinery of the body is, like
mm,
the design of the body, the human body is absolutely, when I started looking into it, it just blew my human mind. I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, like what a good bit of machinery we've got. This is absolutely frigging amazing. We've just not been taught to, or now, like for the past however many 100 years, just not been, we've not known how to utilize it all.
Mm.
So I'm
Yeah, and of
happy
course,
that
with the end, sorry, go on. I was
I'm
going to
happy
say,
that that's coming online, like you say, with the energies. It's all kind of slotting together nicely.
yeah, exactly. You take the words out of my mouth. The energies themselves that are,
Mm,
coming onto the planet are actually, if you like, pushing this information or this new awareness into our
mhm,
awareness, how the body responds and how, the body is getting itself its own upgrade, like the planet.
mhm,
And then, things like this come more into our awareness so that we can use them to, embrace and embody the new energies. In other words, we align and maintain our alignment with them.
mhm.
So it's very valuable, a bit like, so much has been said about grounding at the moment,
Yeah,
and I've spent a lot of time walking on the beach barefooted and feeling the energy, releasing energy into the earth
yeah,
and so on. And, that feels right. So it's, again, we get information or we get guidance in so many ways. And
yeah.
sometimes it's quite obvious, like something we hear or something we read or something we see. And sometimes it's more like, an intuition, whatever,
Mm.
feeling.
Yeah, and then I love the feelings and a
Mm.
knowing. So a knowing and a
Yeah.
feeling. I love them ones. So this is just for fun. This last question. This is human fun.
You mean this wasn't fun earlier?
No, this was
I've been
fun, but
having a
this
lot
is
of fun, Tammy.
okay. This is a very, very human question. Then I'll
Oh,
rephrase
okay,
it.
a
This is a
human
very
question.
human
Right.
question
Okay,
because
I'll do my
I'm,
best.
I'm thinking maybe the people what are going to watch this are going to want to know. So,
Mm.
out of the beings we know about, like the Palladians, Syrians, Arcturians, Andromedans, what do you think is going to make the first contact on a big scale?
I think the Palladians, because they are probably, well, this is a bit of a generalization, but my sense is most likely the Palladians because first of all they look like us, and or they don't look too dissimilar. I mean, they're a lot of them are very Nordic looking, blonde hair, sort of, very striking eyes, but they are very much humanoid
Yeah.
in the same way that we are, or in a very similar way. Now, in fairness, there are, Andromedans and others from other galaxies who are similar, but perhaps not so strikingly similar.
Mhm.
So that would be my sense, but I may be completely wrong. I mean, there are so many races out there, Tammy. It's like,
Glenn, I done a session the other day, or I don't even know what you call it. Me and a friend was on a FaceTime, and I
mm,
went into a channel, hundreds of thousands, literally.
yeah,
And my human brain's like trying to wrap its it couldn't really wrap its mind around it. Like hundreds of thousands, and I'm like, okay,
Mm,
so many,
yeah.
so many.
The other thing about the Palladiums is they're very attractive. So,
That's right.
and yeah, I mean, they are attractive. I mean, I don't want to go down the road of, we should only be welcoming attractive looking people. Attractive people do tend to attract.
Catch the eye.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an afterthought, of course, but it's
Yeah, yeah. So this has been,
what will be, will be.
yeah, yeah, exactly what will be, will be. This has been wonderful. And thank you so much for coming on again and sharing your perspectives, your knowledge, your wisdom with me and everyone what's going to watch this. And I'll link your channel and I will link the meditation as well, what you said about.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for watching. And if you've got anything you'd like to say to end this beautiful podcast with.
Love one another, be kind to one another, treat everyone as you would have them treat you. This is still so important. Kindness is still so important. Even small things, I gave some money to the guy outside Tesco's earlier, selling The Big Issue. I never take the magazine. He can have the money, that sort of thing. I mean, that's I'm not saying that to brag in any way, but even small things like that,
Yeah,
opening the door for someone, smiling, just smiling at a
yeah.
stranger, you know? It's so easy. And does it matter if you're going to smile back? No, not
No,
at all.
no.
Because
Sometimes you
that
get a
person will
strange look.
smile on.
Yeah, sometimes you get a strange look because I notice I smile a lot more than I've ever smiled. And sometimes I think people are not used to having someone smiling at them.
Yes.
They're like, what? Have I got anything come up? What? But a smile is the simplest thing to give.
And compliments as well, I like, I like the color of your shirt. I like the way blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter, it's like there's something because you know, that's acknowledgement as well. It's not just
Yeah,
appreciation, it's acknowledging that person and saying, I recognize that you exist. I recognize that you are part of my life. Even in the tiniest way, doesn't matter. Every
and it
little
makes a big
counts.
impact.
Yeah, it
It
makes an
makes a
impact.
Yeah,
And
such a
it's
big
not just the
impact.
impact on the other person, it's the impact on the whole field.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure we'll have you on again if you'd like to come on again and we can dive into lots more stuff.
Always a pleasure, Tammy. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you and the next one in due course.
Okay, then. And thank you everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time. Bye.